Hello, welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer, and today I'll be the guest host. Our guest is Professor Stefan Bradley, sometimes known as Stefan M. Bradley. He is the chair of Black Studies at Amherst College. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at Prof. S. Bradley. He is the author of If We Don't Get It, A People's History of Ferguson, coming out on May 20th. If I'm doing my math right, that is on Tuesday. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. I am so thrilled to have my friend Stefan Bradley join us today. We've known each other for a number of years, going back, I think we were trying to figure it out before the show, 2016 or 2017. I met him at a United Way conference, and we'll share a little bit about that later. But first, everyone who's watching on replay, because you're watching the very beginning of the show, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We know that a number of people watch the show after it's live. 8:30 a.m. on Sunday is not everybody's favorite time, but we appreciate you taking the time to come back and watch this show. We aired the show every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. We obviously take off for holidays and such. We took off for Mother's Day. But you can usually find us on your channels, on your social media channels, on Sundays at 8:30. We produced the show in partnership with Scroll and Scroll Global, one of India's most important websites. So we want to thank them for their support. We also want to thank Parekh for their longtime sponsorship of the show. They've been a great partner for Sri. And we appreciate all of their support. And of course, the show is produced by Digimentors, the digital, social, and events consulting firm that Sri started several years ago. I'm proud to be a vice president of events and communications for Digimentors. So let's go ahead and welcome some of the folks who are watching and joining us this morning. Patricia Freudenberg says, grace and greetings from New York. Thank you, Patricia. Jonathan is watching from the East Village and offers greetings. Thank you, Jonathan. Doug Levy, good morning from the San Francisco Bay Area. We make it a point every show. Doug is watching at 5:30 in the morning, local time. Talk about dedication. We know people watch in California, watch the show to see what's going to be in the paper, because they don't get their newspaper on their driveway until a couple hours later. So they use it as a preview of what's to come. So Doug, thank you so much. Longtime radio hand. I know you're up early. Follow him on Twitter, SF Doug. Great job. I want to make sure that is SF Doug and not the full SF Doug Levy. My apologies if I got that wrong. I'm double checking, but no, it's SF Doug. Good. And Patricia says, welcome to Professor Bradley already. Ken Fisher says, good morning, friends, from a sunny and cool Robbins, Iowa. Ken, that's not where you're usually set up, is it? Just let us know in the comments. Apollo is watching from Philadelphia. Thank you, Apollo. Oh, my God. This is what I was hoping for. Walter Grayson, good morning from St. Paul. Please take time to remember George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the global movement for racial justice. Absolutely. Walter Grayson is another close friend of mine, a good friend of the show, another professor of economics and history. He's at Macalester College. I know he's good friends with Professor Bradley. They're active in a number of the same circles, particularly ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Walter, thank you for joining us, my friend. Diane Stefani, good morning from sunny Margate, New Jersey. And we have a first-time viewer, Amy Bly, watching on Twitter. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. As if you caught the very beginning, We do this show every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We bring on guests like Professor Bradley, and we spend about a half hour, 40 minutes with our guest, and then we spend about 40 minutes talking about the New York Times, reviewing the big stories of in the print Sunday edition. Sri Srinivasan, who's our host, has been doing the show for about 9 years now. In October, it'll be 10 years. And I've been working with him for about 7.5 years as the executive producer and occasional guest host, like today. For folks who are wondering, Sri is otherwise engaged. His son is graduating from college this weekend. Cannot believe that's happening, but he's at a graduation ceremony, so he could not be with us today. Doug says we are covering an important topic, important to hear the discussion. Walter says, love to see the read-along community this morning. And Ken says, I'm still in Cedar Rapids. Map apps thinks I'm in a nearby suburb. Robbins. Interesting. Always interesting. As a reminder, our guest is Professor Stefan Bradley, Chair of Black Studies at Amherst College. And we are so thrilled to have him join us. He is the author of If We Don't Get It, A People's History of Ferguson. Hopefully folks here know, we also have a large audience watching from India. Ferguson was the site of major protests and an uprising, if you will, about 10 years ago in August, after Michael Brown was shot and killed. An unarmed young black man was shot and killed by police. Everything that followed over the next several years, the Black Lives Matter movement. Walter mentioned other black men who were shot by police, but Ferguson was an incredible touch point for folks. So we will bring on Stefan in just a moment. We just want to give you a little bit of a taste of the book from Ibram Kendi, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. If We Don't Get It couldn't be more vital to the resistance pages of history. What a powerful centering and championing of the young black activists who forged the Ferguson Uprising's thunderous call for racial justice. With that setup, I bring you my good friend, Stefan Bradley.
Oh, what's up, Neil?
What's up, Stefan?
Hey, man, I'm doing all right, and I like your T-shirt quite a lot.
Absolutely.
There you go. I think you dressed for the moment. If I'd have got the memo, I would have been better dressed. Yeah.
Well, you're always well dressed, Stefan. I know that you have a certain image to uphold as a named university professor at Amherst College, it's. I'm glad that you're on the East Coast now after years on the West Coast. It was we've known each other for years, and I've talked to you about being on the show, but that Doug Levy is the exception. Getting up at 5:30 and being camera ready is not easy. But yeah, so with the T-shirt, one of the clients and folks on the show know that we work very closely with the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation, founded by Congressman John Lewis before he passed, to carry on his work. We'll be talking about the parallels to the Black youth-led protests in Ferguson and the work that John Lewis did a little later in the show. But first, I want to ask a question that we often ask our guests. Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You logged in a little bit earlier, of course. What would you be doing on a Sunday morning if you weren't with us?
If I weren't with you, I'd be preparing the kiddo breakfast to get to practice, to tennis practice. Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, at this time.
Tennis practice.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned your kiddo. I remember when we first met and we talked about our kids. I believe they're about the same age. My daughter's 12 now, right?
Yeah, soon. Yeah. So 11. So
that's
very
right.
close.
Yeah, I remember when we first met. And I couldn't remember whether I think it was Michigan, a conference in Michigan, right?
Yeah, let's see. It might have been before then, though, Neil, is what I'm thinking. It might have been, was it California? I think.
Well, California might have been the first one. That might have been then. Then I
Yeah,
might have seen you in Michigan afterward.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Hmm.
so California, or not California, the Western Regional Conference, either in Albuquerque or Las Vegas is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
But we spent time together, and what was hilarious is, I mean, we chatted at the conference, and then we saw each other at the gate to check, not even the gate, the ticket desk to check in for our flight.
That's right.
So we're chatting a little bit, and that's cool. Oh yeah, we're on the same flight. Great. We walk up to the gate, and then we're talking at the gate for half hour, 40 minutes, whatever, however early we were. And you're at a conference and you see the speaker, and I thought it was. I mean, I was thrilled that I got to spend more time with our esteemed speaker, and we're so impressive, and I mean, I was just like in awe. But then it was time to board the flight, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you had like an early
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
because you're so important and stuff. You're probably boarding like gate group 2 or 3. I was like 7, 8, 9, and so all right, see ya. Hopefully we'll be in touch, and we'll let's email and stuff. And much to your chagrin, and I know you wanted to sleep that whole flight, when I walked on, my seat was right next to yours.
Right next. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that solidified a relationship, lifelong relationship. And so I'm happy for it. And that's, you can't get away from your tribe, from your people. There's no way.
No. We also, I think then it was at Michigan that we, when I saw you at the next event, you had the speech in the morning, the opening, and then we both had time in the afternoon. We spent like another 2 hours in the restaurant
That's right.
at that conference center, just talking. And then after that, it's just been great. So let's talk about Ferguson. Let's jump right into it. You were how long had you been a professor at St. Louis University when Michael Brown was killed?
Yeah. I had been there probably for about 4 or 5 years, somewhere in there. I think I got to SLU, St. Louis University, around about 2009, 2000, yeah, somewhere around there, 2008, 2009. And yeah, it was closer to 2009. And I had just taken on the position of director of African American Studies. So that was new for me. That had happened not more than a year before, probably less than a year before. So, yeah.
So just a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then this incredible incident takes place. For folks who may not remember the history, or just understood something happened in Ferguson, Michael Brown was an unarmed black man. He had some kind of an incident, some kind of a confrontation or interaction with a local police officer that ended up in him being shot and killed. What was your first reaction when you heard? How did you hear, first of all, and what started going through your mind?
Yeah. No, so I had actually heard from my students. I had heard from a student who had texted me to let me know that a young man had been shot in the Campbell Green apartments in Ferguson. And I thought it was terrible. It's, in North County, it wasn't the first time I heard about a young person being shot, unfortunately. And so I thought it was tragic when I first heard it. But the young person was reaching out in part because the body had been laid out there for hours. And so the young person that I was communicating with indicated that it had been, 2.5 hours. That's when I first started clocking the death of Michael Brown. And so we kept communicating over the next couple hours. So at least another 2.5 hours, we were on the phone going back and forth, and they still had not taken Michael Brown's lifeless body off the street yet. And I thought it was just terrible. I couldn't imagine it all for his parents. But moreover, I couldn't imagine what it looked like to a lot of the children in the area. There was a lot of kids. That was the only reason I knew about the Canfield Green apartment and that area of Ferguson. I had been there before doing some work with a youth group, and I noticed there was a lot of kids running around all the time. So this was August. This was in the dead of the heat, August. In Missouri, and you kind of have to know Missouri to know just how muggy and hot it gets. So to me, I thought this is awful. But the student reported to me that they hadn't covered the body, and that was the part that was most shocking. To me, I thought it was macabre in some way that they hadn't covered the body for hours, and I thought nothing could be worse for these children that are walking by and seeing this.
They didn't cover the body. They were doing an investigation.
Yeah, that's what they called it.
4 hours.
Yeah, for hours. Eventually, apparently, some of the Ferguson brass showed up and covered the body, but that's not how you treat a deceased person. That's not, and people on the ground made the very important point that in Missouri, nobody treats dogs like that. Like when dogs get hit on the street, they get treated better than that. And that's not a lie. That's a fact. And so that's why it was so frustrating to people watching this unfurl.
And put this in, not the larger historical context. We could be here for hours if we did that. But in the more recent, kind of this goes back 10 years now. And I want to bring up again Walter's very first comment, because there are some important names here. Sure. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery is on that list. There are just so many. Sure. Unfortunately, such a long list of Black men and women and children who have been shot and killed by police. Philando Castile is on that list, to take another Minnesota reference. I actually was in Minnesota just after Philando Castile was shot and killed, and we went out to the very location where he was shot, and I was there with my United Way colleagues, Stacy Stewart and Darlene Slaughter, and that was so moving to be in that space. And I remember the next day when I spoke at the conference, I talked about him being murdered by police, and people were pleasantly surprised that I was willing to use those words. But that's really what this is. These people were murdered.
So
where I was going to ask you, where did Michael Brown's shooting fall in that kind of timeline? Was he the first in terms of this more recent that recent spate of killings? Was it the most notable?
Good question. No, he wasn't the first. So you have to, in putting this in context, you have to think that actually before his death, there was Trayvon Martin's.
Trayvon Martin, of course.
Right. So we remember Trayvon Martin, and that's where Black Lives Matter as a phrase, came up from is Trayvon Martin. Didn't really take hold like as widely as it did during the Ferguson uprising. But then you think about people like Sean Bell and Eric Garner. Those were New Yorkers that were killed. Let's see, right quickly after Mike Brown's death, you had people like Jordan Davis and Sandra Bland. In town, you had a young man who was killed by police in St. Louis, and so it was a succession of these kinds of deaths that took place with unarmed, or you mentioned Philando Castile, legally armed black men and women and other people who had these confrontations with police or not, and they perished because of them. And so this was an issue that the young people took up, an issue of what they were calling state violence. And so using the word murder became controversial in a lot of different corners, but in other capacities, I don't know how you would view it. Shooting and killing unarmed people, I don't know how else you would see it. So shortly afterwards, after Mike Brown, you had Alton Sterling, you had so many others along those lines. So, yeah.
I will say that during COVID, Sri did hosted a show, a daily show, I think 250 days in a row once everything locked down. And one of the things that he focused on was saying their names.
Sure.
He would recite a list of names of black men, women, and children who had been shot or killed by the police. So let's get back to Ferguson and the response, the reaction from the community. Your book focuses on young people. Your work, your career has focused on Black youth. At different times, you've written about the uprisings and the protests during the 60s at some of our major academic institutions, Columbia University in particular. It's been 10 years since Ferguson. What prompted you to tell their story now versus, a year after, on the 1 year anniversary, for example?
Yeah. Well, this is actually more personal than it is anything else. I do think as an historian, you need a little bit of space to try to tell stories. You get a little bit more information, a little more perspective. That's true. But I think it was more personal than that for me. I didn't want to give the impression that I was taking advantage of the movement in trying to make money off of the movement or gain some kind of fame off of the movement. And so I was reluctant to actually write about in any formal way the Ferguson uprising. So, but as we approached the 10-year anniversary, I thought to myself just how important this moment was, historically speaking, just what it meant to the people and what it meant to the nation. As we approached the 10-year anniversary, we had seen 2020 and the America's racial reckoning, and I thought that was crucial. But much of it was cribbing from the Ferguson uprising, and so what we saw were these lines, these I don't know how you would put it, these themes that arose, the methodology of the actions in 2020. So that's why it became important to me to kind of situate the Ferguson uprising as ground zero for this modern movement. That this sleepy little place in eastern Missouri would become ground zero. And to me, I thought, okay, well, here you are, Mr. Historian. It's your turn to contribute to the movement. I was there. I wasn't a frontliner or anything like that, but I was there to observe. And so it was my turn to do my part.
That's great. I do want to talk about history in a little bit and looking at the role of Black youth in these kinds of protest movements and the work that they've done. We'll talk about John Lewis in just a few moments. But first, I want to welcome a few folks who are watching who've joined us since the opening. Since we started the show, I have to give a quick hello because this is the one time of the week I talk to my mom. Hey mom, mom's watching from Hastings on Hudson, New York, I jest. I do call her in between as well. This is not the only time I call my mom. You got to call your mom, right?
That's right. That's right.
And of course, we didn't have a show last week because of Mother's Day, but always appreciate my mom watching, and she's definitely become part of this read-along community, this family that is watching. I want to go back to Amy, who is watching on Twitter and looking for her a comment. Can't find it right now, but first-time viewer. If you watch on Facebook in particular, Sri's Facebook account, Sri Srinivasan, you'll see they're people who've gotten to know each other, have become friends. It really is a community that we've built up over the last several years. So definitely appreciate everyone being a part of that. My good friend, Stefan Kaplan, Steffen, he's a close friend, has been a guest on the show, has worked with us on a number of projects. I want to make sure Stefan, right? You pronounce it?
Yeah, that's how I pronounce it.
Spelling, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So he says, "Good morning to the family." I always, when I'm typing it out, I always got to make sure I've got 2 F's for him and 1 for you. It's always something to think about. Our friend Rose Horowitz is watching from Connecticut. She's looking forward to this conversation as well. My mom says she remembers you from the last time.
I do. I was about to say that. That is so sweet that she's still here. Great to see you, Mama. Yeah, thanks so much.
That was about 2-3 years ago, if I remember correctly. Yeah. It's been good. I'm glad we were able to get back on. And so we're talking about your book, If We Don't Get It, and I want to put the cover back on just so folks know. If We Don't Get It, A People's History of Ferguson is coming out on Tuesday, May 20th. So it is forthcoming, but just a few days. Is this your first one of your first major interviews about the book?
It is. Let's see. I had done something in Boston at some point, but this is this is breaking news, Neil. This is
breaking news. Absolutely. I know you have a big event coming up later this week, but thank you for sharing it with our audience. Paula Kiger is watching from Tallahassee, Florida, longtime producer of the show. Dan Foreman watching from North Jersey, another close colleague at Digimentors. Naomi Service is watching from Rhode Island, saying it's a beautiful day and this is an important topic. I think Patricia Freudenberg's quote is great. A generation which ignores history has no past and no future.
True indeed.
No past and no future. Let's talk about that history. We invoked Congressman Lewis's name earlier. Youth, in particular, Black youth, have led a number of movements over time. John Lewis was 23 years old in 1963, just 25 when he was walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and was a few months later in the White House for the signing of the Voting Rights Act. Talk about the role that Black youth play. Why is it? What is it about Black youth in so many examples of our history the civil rights movement, the marches, and then the 60s, the takeovers around the academic institutions that you've written about, and obviously Ferguson. What is it about young Black men?
Yeah, about young Black people in general, but I
Or
think,
people?
yeah. Thanks for the question. I think, to my mind, if we're looking at things historically, if we're looking at the United States historically, young Black people have provided the soul to the nation. There's no doubt about it. The young Black people have been the most courageous and emboldened of the whatever people envision as patriots, whatever people envision as advocates of democracy. It's actually been young Black people who have been willing to test the bounds of that. So so you can go back as far as you would like, but I focus on the period in the mid 20th century moving forward, where young Black people literally put their bodies on the line to prove the things that America said it was. So whether that be people like Barbara Johns leading a strike in 1952 out in Farmville, Virginia, to ensure that her, that her education wasn't Jim Crowed. Whether it be, you mentioned John Lewis, whether it be John Lewis and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee or the Congress of Racial Equality, with whom he collaborated. Those young people were willing to do things that the most respectable older people couldn't do or wouldn't do, and to me, I think that's worthy of note. There's no amount of pages in history. There's not enough pages in history about these young people who were, I said courageous before, but some people could say crazy. The things that they were willing to do don't always make logical sense. That is to walk across a bridge facing down the police department, John Lewis and Hosea Williams. That's not normal thinking. That's not normal thinking, but they did it for democracy. And Jimmy Lee Jackson facing down people to protect his mama in Selma. So
And
many
paying
people
the
like it,
price,
and paying the
paying the
ultimate price. Ultimate price. So these were foot soldiers for democracy, as some people have described them. People like Howard Zinn, people like so many others have talked about this idea that if these young people hadn't moved out, and this is the claim that I'm making about what I call young Democrats, small d, young Democrats in Ferguson and in St. Louis, if they hadn't moved out, there would have been an earlier constitutional crisis on the hands of the United States. And so what they did is they rescued, this is my argument, they rescued democracy. And the Ferguson uprising protesters and organizers and leaders were part of that lineage.
Absolutely. It's incredible in terms of what these people accomplished and what they were willing to do, what they were willing to put on the line. You talked about the foot soldiers in Selma. I am just incredibly proud to have been able to meet some of them when I was down there in March for the 60th anniversary of the of Bloody Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Three of them in front of you. Kirk, in particular, on the right, was 14 at the time. He was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a little further back from the front, and he talked about how he and his friends, as soon as when they realized what was going on, they turned and ran as fast as they could, and got split up, didn't know what they were doing, where they were going. But to hear him talk about police at the time were using cattle prods on people.
Yeah.
I mean, nightsticks are one thing, but cattle prods is a whole different thing.
He's speaking about the cruelty of it. So that was the point, the cruelty of it, the idea that the state could beat you into place, and that was a situation where these young people, this is so important, Neil, this one particular point. The young people who were looking to go over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that wasn't sanctioned. And this is important to note, that John Lewis and Hosea Williams and the people that followed them, Martin King was like, you should wait a little while before we get, official approval to make this walk to Montgomery. The young people didn't wait. The young people didn't wait, and this is something that I try to emphasize for the Ferguson uprising, that the young people didn't wait to ask anybody who was important whether or not they should cry out if their peer got shot. And that was the reason why John Lewis was out there. Jimmy Lee Jackson got shot dead by police in the same way that Mike Brown got shot dead by police. And so they didn't ask permission to do this. And to me, I think that's vital to note. And in doing so, they drew the attention of the nation to a place that nobody would have ever paid attention to before, really. And so I think that's crucial in my mind.
Selma, Montgomery, otherwise a sleepy, town in Alabama, who would have realized that that's where. Now they were trying to march from Selma to Montgomery, to the state capitol, for voting rights, and they were stopped, obviously, at the bridge and beaten back. John Lewis came within inches of his life, losing his life. He actually. His diction, his speech was permanently impacted from the beatings he took that day. There was a second march that then Dr. King came down and he started a second march, confronted the police, and then stopped and turned around Tuesday, because he didn't want to risk the violence. And it wasn't until the National Guard was called in, President Johnson nationalized them, and they escorted them across the bridge through to the Capitol, that they actually were able to make it. So it took three tries.
Absolutely.
You talk about how these foot soldiers, when these men and women were young, when they were doing what older, more I'd say rational adults would not do. Is that the case with other examples in history? When you looked at these movements, when you look at the upending the ivory tower, the name of your book focusing on Columbia and I think Harvard as well, if I'm not mistaken.
8 Ivies,
the Ivies, and also with Ferguson, are these young people, kind of pushing back against their parents and saying, we're going to take to the streets, this is ridiculous?
Yeah, I think pushing back against society, true indeed. I think extending the campaigns and the movement and sentiment of their parents, I think is what we saw. The willingness to do what some people hadn't been able to do before. So there had been, of course, a civil rights movement. The civil rights movement that makes the books, that makes the textbooks most of the time is kind of a sanitized civil rights movement where, everybody locked arms and was beaten, sang, and then all of a sudden you got laws. These young people were able to do the things that weren't respectable. And this is, to me, the part of history that doesn't get emphasized quite enough, is the ability of these young people to act outside the bounds of respectability. And that's what I write about with the newest book, If We Don't Get It, is these are young people who wouldn't be characterized typically as American leaders. Some of these people were queer. Some of these people were what America would call, I don't know, the word that a lot of Americans would use would be thugs. These are people who had neck tattoos. These are people who sagged their pants. These are people who had dreadlocks. These are people who cussed a lot, who smoked weed, but they were smart enough to holler like hell when their civil rights and human rights were violated. And this is what we saw in an earlier period too. In American history, it's a strange thing, but we're very afraid to talk about things like Black Power, and which was a natural outgrowth of a certain kind of state repression. When people are pushed too far, they'll eventually have to push back. There's just that's human nature. And poor people, working class people, were at the forefronts typically of these movements. I wrote about in an earlier period where the movements of these poor and working class Black people influenced the movements of these more privileged members of the Black intelligentsia who had the opportunity to attend some of these elite colleges and universities. They took on the cadence and the themes of these working class and underclass Black resistors. That set the stage for what would come, 40, 50 years later with the Ferguson uprising. It was, and let's be clear about this. This was a movement from the bottom up. The people who were on the ground first were mothers and grandmothers. Those were the first people on the ground first. And this is not unusual either, because they saw that Michael Brown could have been their child. Those were the first people. And then when the police brought out dogs and tear gas and pepper spray, those young men that all the people crossed the street to get away from, the young men who smell like marijuana, those young men came out to protect their mothers and grandmothers, and the mothers and grandmas brought their babies out. They came out to protect them, along with the young women and others in the neighborhoods. These were people who were working class, who went to work every day, or people who didn't have jobs. These were people who were the Marxist Leninists would have called them the lumpen proletariat.
The lumpen proletariat.
Yeah, that's what they would have called them. And so, but here was the idea, is that they caught a consciousness, and they understood the stakes, that if you keep taking people from our neighborhood, and people in Ferguson were over arrested, over convicted, if you keep taking people from our neighborhood, we're losing. We're constantly losing. And now you kill a child, basically a child. This was an 18-year-old, right? This was somebody who just graduated from high school. You killed somebody whom we know lives here. We know his grandmama. We know his mama and daddy. They stay here. You killed this person and didn't have the decency to cover his body. That's too far. And that's the role that young Black people have been playing since time immemorial.
What does it do to the movement? What does it do, for the rest of society when they're watching, when they're learning about these protests, and the media is writing about this? What is the impact of having thugs be the face of a movement like this, or were they the face of the movement? I mean, how did that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. So America doesn't know how to deal with Black people who don't present like maybe like I do, with a collar and
Among friends,
yeah,
uppity Black people, is that?
Yeah. Well, so America doesn't. Well, so the idea is America loves a middle class representative. So it's easier to deal with a Dr. King. It's easier to deal with a John Lewis who went to college. It's easier to deal with that kind. It's much harder to deal with a Fred Hampton. It's much harder to deal with others who were in the streets at the time. So Elaine Brown and these kinds of people in an earlier period. So when trying to figure out who were the leaders of this movement, the media had such a hard time. The mainstream media had such a hard time doing this, because they were looking for the person who would articulate the best, the person who would speak the best. And there were those who represented the movement incredibly well and articulately, and they did well. But not all the leaders were respectable in that way. Some were rappers. Some were some were non-binary, some were people who we couldn't characterize as being mainstream Americans. So the young people did the best they could for themselves, and they took to Twitter, and they took to Facebook, and they took to all of these different venues to tell their own stories. Now, there were people at the time who were telling the story as well. Some elected officials were able to communicate via Twitter and other kinds of ways. But these young people from varying backgrounds were able to situate themselves as leaders of the movement. And I thought that this was important. I thought that this was important in the sense that they got to get their own story out. And this is what is almost different than earlier movements. So Twitter kind of changed the game in a lot of ways. Technology changed the game, that they got to report out on their own. They got to use these mechanisms for organizing, these social media mechanisms for organizing. So in doing so, you got to see people that you would naturally not see in the New York Times, that you wouldn't necessarily see on television. So I was pleased about that part of it.
And this is an image of some of the protesters, certainly, not necessarily representative, but gives you that sense, young Black people, who are angry, who can't take it anymore, are not the polite, respectful, asking for permission. It certainly invokes an image from an earlier time. You were talking about Dr. King and John Lewis. You also mentioned Fred Hampton, and this image of Black Panthers scared people,
Yes.
right? I mean, this is what in a number of communities, particularly in the last several years, with the Black Lives Matter movement and the killings. I still remember in 2020 when people took to the streets in the middle of a pandemic. It was a question of it wasn't a question of personal safety. It was like we had to be out there. We had to make some noise, and it scared people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, there's nothing scarier in America than when Black people stop smiling. So, like I said, is we can handle the United States can handle certain kinds of Black people when they're catching balls, throwing balls, jumping high, making you laugh, acting. Those are the kinds of Black people that are digestible in America. The kind that stop smiling and say, "You will give us our rights, or we'll take them." Those are the kinds that people find annoying, frightening, dangerous, threatening. And they treat them as such. And that's where the confrontations between the state and citizens came to a head on the streets of Ferguson.
And I want to make sure that people, if in case you didn't hear it, repeat it for folks in the back. There is nothing scarier than when Black people stop smiling. Nothing scarier. And I'll say that I used the word uppity earlier. I think that's that doesn't do it justice, because to me at least, again, using the term among friends, an uppity Black man or uppity black person might be protesting a little bit or kind of pushing the boundaries. I don't think it captures the anger. I don't think it captures the intense emotion that we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, to be clear and to be sure, the people on the street who were organizing this, organizing as part of the uprising, organizing the movement, they were different and almost antagonistic to a certain kind of middle class and elite class Black people. That is, they saw where respectable Black people had been trying to work with the system for a good while, and it hadn't moved quickly. that much of the fuel for the fire in the Ferguson uprising had been because there weren't as many strides made towards equity and justice that these young people thought should have been made, and so these young people were representative of the throwaways, of the neglected people in society. And this is what I told you, and we met back in 2016. I think I said this back then, that you're going to pay for these young people one way or another, on the front end or the back end.
Yes.
So you're going to pay for Head Start. You're going to pay for early childhood learning. You're going to pay for these things on the front end, or you're going to pay on the back end. If you want to neglect them, if you want to ensure that they're marginalized to neighborhoods without food, without health care, without all these different things, then they will pay. They will make you pay on the back end. And that looks like broken windows. That looks like streets being shut down. That looks like you having to pay millions of dollars to recoup. So these were people exercising the only power they had, and that was their freedom rights, their rights to assemble. And if that wasn't enough, then they went further and they did things that violated laws, but garnered the attention of the world. And when I say garnered the attention of the world, Neil, I'm talking about people from Brazil were calling, people from Japan, all over the world were calling to find out what's happening in Ferguson, Missouri, of all places. And
Absolutely.
Let me do this real quick. There was a terrible tornado that ripped through St. Louis.
Yes. Yes.
And so I just wanted to send out blessings and prayers to the people, and let's everybody, if you have it, donate a little piece of money to help get things back together.
You still have close ties to people back there. Are folks that you know, are they okay? Do they have their homes?
So many people lost power. That was one of the things. I think another thing is a lot of the infrastructure in St. Louis, particularly in North St. Louis, is old, and it wasn't prepared. The tornadoes rarely come through the city. They always go around the city, typically. And so the fact that it came through the city this time caused an incredible amount of damage. So some of the people that I knew, they need to leave their homes, but many good thoughts and energy sent their way.
Absolutely. I want to bring in a couple more comments before we shift gears and talk about the paper. Like I said, I know we could have done this for much longer, but I want to make sure that we have Mary C. Curtis, who is a columnist with CQ Roll Call and a longtime journalist. She does a talk show out of North Carolina. I could not miss this one from Charlotte. And she says that John Lewis once told me he did not know if you would get to the other side of that bridge. Even as a congressman, he protested on the House floor over gun violence and was accused of causing chaos. My mom said, yes, young black people participated in demonstrations and rallies during the 60s and 70s. They did not want the suffering and ill treatment. Absolutely. Walter has a question for you, so I want you to be prepared because this is going to be a good question. Professor Bradley, and I want to note the professor in that question. Tell us more about the community of scholars who are currently under attack by the U.S. government because they have supported the movement for Black lives since 2012. How has the study of civil rights history changed in the wake of mass incarceration over the last 50 years? Two questions in there. The attack of the government, and this is in that, not just the context of DEI and the attack on museums, but this is taking a step further in terms of specifically targeting scholars. Take that question first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the question, Professor Greason, one of my good buddies in history. Yeah. So here's the deal. there's a cadre of scholars, top scholars, of educators who have taken up topics dealing with the United States and its relationship to Black people, and they've written wonderfully and fearlessly about this. You could call it a relationship, but this challenge to Black rights. And in doing so, they've garnered the attention of the government in a lot of ways, the government and other groups. So people like Prof. Greason, people like myself, so many other scholars who are much better than I, we get on lists that say that we're somehow anti-American, that say that we're somehow a threat to young people when we teach our courses that teach truth. So some of us teach in departments of Black Studies, where we focus on the joy, the pain, the struggle, and the striving of Black people. That irks the skin of a lot of people who want to make America great again. They don't want people like myself to talk about the idea that America could be great if it faces the thing that is kept it from being great. And so this takes form in a number of different ways. From the state, how does it take form? Now you have missives coming from the federal government explaining that some departments should be shut down at higher education institutions. Imagine this, that the federal government is telling higher education institutions which departments it should have and which professors are okay to teach. This is so frightening. I don't know. I'm not an alarmist. People who know me know that I'm a pretty cool guy. But this, we're here. We're here at this point. So there's that part of it. There's this movement, this movement from the right to infiltrate. What do you call them? School boards, and to make it so that you can't read Toni Morrison, you can't read James Baldwin, you can't read these great American thinkers, and so that you can't. So you're wearing your John Lewis shirt. In some situations, you wouldn't. In some states, you wouldn't be able to talk about John Lewis's campaigns. That John Lewis, who was a U.S. representative for years, who was a stalwart American, who was one of the best defenders of democracy, you couldn't talk about him. And that's a campaign waged on behalf of private entities, but also the state. And this is where resistance is necessary. So scholars like Professor Greason, so many other scholars, you mentioned the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, National Council of Black Studies, so many others are pushing against this kind of repression, and there's no other word for it.
It's erasure. It's erasure. They're trying to erase history, erase people. If you look at and we've talked about these issues on this show. We did a deep dive on the 1619 Project when it first came out, and we have not shied away from these topics. It is, it doesn't matter what people accomplish or do. There are certain truths in American history, right? You will always be a Black man.
Yeah.
You can't get away from that. People who are Asian, it doesn't matter how many generations removed they are, they will always be foreign. There will always be comments about people saying, wow, your English is so good, right? Which is just absolutely ridiculous. And our history is littered with examples of how we treat indigenous peoples, how we treat Japanese Americans during World War II in terms of internment, much less the history from slavery to Jim Crow to today. It's not new. It's not something different, and it's just a question of how you fight back, how you call it out. the work that you and people like Dr. Grayson are doing, two people that I respect I have so much respect for and so much admiration for. I can only imagine what it's like to be on the front lines. What he asks also, how has the study of civil rights history changed in the wake of mass incarceration? You talk about how the students that you have worked with over the years,
Mhm.
many of them have ended up in jail, in prison.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what does this do to communities?
Well, thanks again for that question. This was a form of community control. Like, so when we're talking about your mom mentioned the 60s and 70s and the need for Black people to rise up in certain kinds of ways. This was a way of controlling movements. So you can police your way out of a movement to neutralize it. And so there's Panthers that are just coming out of prison right now,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what 40, 50 years later. There are other activists similarly situated, not necessarily Black. So you think about people like Leonard Peltier
Mm-hmm.
and so many others that were fighting for human rights that are just coming out of prison now. I have to give a special shout to Josh Williams, who was a Ferguson activist and young leader who is still imprisoned at this very moment for he was convicted of trying to set a gas station afire. It didn't work. He was given a sentence. The sentence was elongated. He ran into some trouble while inside, but I'm telling you this today that he was made an example of in many ways. And so, what we're talking about with this mass incarceration movement, Michelle Alexander wrote about, yes, free Josh Williams. Yes, yes. Michelle Alexander wrote about the new Jim Crow. Um, the idea that so many Black people were systemically placed within the penal system. That is either arrested or convicted or imprisoned, not because they were great threats to society, not in the way that we would think about it. We're talking about nonviolent offenses, largely is what we're talking about, uh, but because of drugs, but because of things like, so we were talking about Ferguson, things like having tickets that you didn't pay,
Mm-hmm.
that could land you in jail. Imagine that. So now these people who will take your car away, so the people towing the cars make money. You get a daily fine on your car being inside. That's somebody making money. The courts have to get their fine money. And then, of course, when you go inside, you have to pay for your housing when you're inside. And so
Yeah.
it becomes a racket in a sense. And so many of these scholars have written about and pointed out that the state was using policing as a way for community control, and I don't think the state liked this idea at all, because one of the easiest things to do is to mistreat criminals. Like, you can, in America, as long as you name it a crime, then there's nothing that keeps you from neglecting, mistreating, or harming somebody if they're doing a crime. So one of the crimes that Black people have committed, you'll remember this from that period in 2020. This phrase, black identity extremists. You remember this phrase that Black people were being investigated because of their push for Black freedom rights online. And this was no different than COINTELPRO. Before, that's the counterintelligence program
Mm-hmm.
of the mid and late 20th century. So this mass incarceration has played a large part of how to control movements. And the police presence that you saw in communities like Ferguson before and after the uprising can't surprise you if you had been paying attention.
We could keep going, Stefan. I would love to keep going if we could. I want to spend a little bit of time with the paper, but
Sure.
before we do, I do want to ask you uh, about your work at Amherst right now, Amherst College, and tell us a little bit about this scene here that I'm going to bring up in just a second. You are at the end of the semester. You are chosen by seniors to give the last address to the class. Tell us about that. What's going on here? What is this about? The last faculty member to formally address their senior assembly. What was that?
Thank you for that. And thank you for adding joy to this conversation. Sometimes I have an ability to talk about the things that are
this is heavy stuff
that involve struggle. But thank you
Yeah.
for adding this piece of joy. It was such an honor, really. I was so humbled. The seniors asked that I be the last person, last faculty member to address them before they graduate, and that's them. I got a standing ovation. They must have been out of their minds. I don't know, but one of the things that I talked to them about is these are some. Listen, you should have seen the honors and awards that these students got. These are some of the brightest students in America, and I told them, for as much as you understand, for as hard as you worked to gain an understanding of American society systems and people and world, really, an understanding of the world. I told them that I don't want you to understand too much. I don't want you to understand why the powerful think it's okay to take advantage of the powerless. I don't want you to understand why the bullies can claim victimhood. I don't want you to understand why people think it's okay to ban books. And I explained to them that their techniques for fighting might have to change. These are Amherst College students, so they're going on to work for Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies. They're going on to run the nation and the world. Their techniques for fighting might have to change, but the fight remains the same. And that all of the privileges, all of the whatever they were able to gain, all of the goodwill that they take with them, if they don't use it for the people, they will be sinning. And that it's an obligation to rescue democracy, to save democracy in the same way that the powerless did in situations like the Ferguson uprising. And so it must have resonated with them. I appreciate it. I had made one remark that I think was going to get me in trouble. I had told them to always wear good shoes and drink good liquor. And I didn't know it was being streamed. If I did, I wouldn't have said it. And so, but what I meant was to always take care of the things and people who take care of you, if you plan on going far. And so,
absolutely. Yeah. I do want to say that when I heard you speak at United Way conferences in Michigan and at the Western Regional Conference, I believe there were several standing ovations as well. Stefan, thank you so much for sharing your morning with us. We still have a little bit of time left. I want to make sure folks know two things. One, if you want to join our mailing list, send me an email, neil@digimentors.group, neil@digimentors.group, and we can keep you abreast of upcoming shows and highlights, etc. And I also want to make sure you know that if you joined us late, if you missed some of the wisdom that Professor Bradley was dropping, please know that when we're done, you'll be able to watch the show from the beginning on the same channels you're watching now, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and our Digimentors website. On Instagram, we'll upload a clip and with a link to watch the full show. But I certainly encourage you, if you're at all interested in Ferguson, in the history, in young Black people standing up and speaking out, watch this episode. Get the book. Get Stefan Bradley's book, If We Don't Get It, A People's History of Ferguson. Definitely worth reading. Stefan, we're going to shift gears now and talk about the newspaper. With Mary Curtis's comment on the screen as I move over to my other table. Love your comment. Whoops, I was out of shot. Love your comment about until we stop smiling. I'm as unscary as they come, asked Neil. Yeah, when I refuse to engage in bad faith conversations, just walk away from folks I encounter at the gym or market who think they get me, they are stunned and resentful. They thought I was one of the good ones. Am from West Baltimore, though. West Baltimore, showing some of her street cred there. So thank you, Mary, for that comment. I am going to get the paper up on the screen now, and we will at least discuss a little bit about what's in the news this Sunday. What's your news habits, Stefan? What do you read? When do you read?
Yeah. I try to. I have unhealthy habits. After waking up and talking to the Bluenopolis, I start looking at the phone. So trying to get the headlines together, and I try to read from the phone as I'm getting everything together and everybody together. And so I'll take a look at the Times. I'll glance at Wall Street Journal. I'll try to give a little time to the Post. Some of these newspapers have kind of shifted here recently. But I also look at St. Louis papers as well, and try to look at the Los Angeles Times, just at least at the headlines when I do.
Mostly online.
Yeah, mostly online. Yeah.
There we go. So sorry about the echo. So that should have fixed the noise issues. Let me know if there are any concerns. We've got the paper today, and the big story, the display story, the quiet journey from Father Bob to Pope Leo, about the new Pope. Just was a little more than a week ago, if I'm not mistaken. And the lead stories, analyst was told to redo findings on Venezuelans. That's about the deportation, using an older legal theory to deport people, and sometimes making mistakes, sending people who have there's no reason to deport them anyway. GOP revolt reflects split on spending, holding up a party's legislative priorities. Below the fold, the iron miners lost their jobs but kept their belief in tariffs. This is a Minnesota Dateline. Here's that you mentioned the tornadoes earlier, a deadly path of tornadoes. Extreme storms tore through Kentucky and Missouri, leaving destruction in London, Kentucky. Right on the front page there, Stefan, corner where I can't breathe ignited a movement, confronts its own struggle. That's a reference to Minnesota. George Floyd, intersection of 38th Street East and Chicago Avenue in Minneapolis was forever altered the day a police officer knelt on George Floyd's neck 5 years ago, led to a national reckoning over police misconduct. And they talk about Black Lives Matters. The space unresolved state in many ways reflects how stuck the country remains on matters of race, justice, and reparations. Reparations. What's your thought on that, sir?
For reparations, categorically for reparations for Black people who are descendant of enslaved people. I think, to me, it makes the most sense. America can move on finally with reparations. Some people find it very scary, and they say, well, it's not workable. It's not, if reparations were paid, the United States would go into debt. There's a million different reasons why not to do the right thing. And the right thing would be to issue reparations. Do I think they would be forthcoming quickly? No, I don't. But if you're asking me my opinion on whether reparations should be issued, yes, of course they should be.
Great.
Systemically, Black people were categorically marginalized. So yes.
Another story on the front page here that I'd like to ask you about. Professors face student rancor over use of AI. In February, this is the lead, Ella Stapleton, then a senior at Northeastern University, was reviewing lecture notes from her organizational behavior class when she noticed something odd. Was that a query to ChatGPT from her professor? Halfway through the document, which her business professor had made for a lesson in leadership, was an instruction to ChatGPT to expand on all areas, be more detailed and specific. So there's a growing conversation around the use of AI by students and some concerns about students using AI. This is not the first time that I've seen questions raised about professors using AI. What are your thoughts on AI? Do you use it? Are you having to monitor your students' use of it? How's it
Yeah.
playing out for you in the classroom?
That, let me just tell you something. This is one of the most confounding issues affecting higher education right now. It really is. I cracked up at that particular article because it was like an Uno reverse on students for the last months, and well, now it's been a year, or two, a couple years. So many higher education educators have been worried about students using AI. And so this was a situation where where students were upset that the professor was using AI. Uh, I'm I'm we actually were just talking about this, Neil, before we got online. I am something of a Luddite. If left to my own devices, and I think this is the direction that I'm going back to blue books and pens and papers. And, you know, it's difficult. It's quite difficult to determine just what role AI played in the submission of some of these term papers. I'm in largely a humanities field where we deal with writing all the time. So this is a serious issue for us as professors. So we have to find different ways to either engage it. Right now, I'm feeling like we're fighting the ocean, and the ocean always seems to win. So we have to figure out different ways of engaging it, or going back to the very old school techniques that got us here before there was artificial intelligence to assist with these things. So the big deal for me, though, is if you're paying me all of this money, like I have a whole obligation to ensure that you know how to communicate uh, with the written word. Like yeah, I have an obligation. I take that quite seriously. So my students get upset with me because we have to rewrite, because I mark up their work. And even if it's AI, then I take pride in marking up the work of whoever wrote it on the AI. They need revision as well. So it's a tough
Absolutely.
time. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot we can talk about in terms of AI, the use of AI, not just in academia, but in the work world as well, and understanding what the appropriate place to use it is, and
Hmm.
when,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
also when in the evolution of an individual, as you're dealing with students,
Hmm.
they still need to learn how to think critically for
Absolutely.
themselves before they can start using AI to augment what they're doing. As a professional myself, I use AI, on occasion to help what I'm doing, to augment what I'm doing.
Sure.
And I'm very mindful of what I bring to the table.
That's
What
right.
content AI is analyzing for me,
Yeah.
and what I add to what they do. I would never run AI on something and then publish something without credit. It's almost a question of like, have I put in enough work to to get credit for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
like copying from a published work. and not giving, not doing your own analysis, not doing your adding value to it.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a challenging issue, to say the least.
No doubt.
The rest of the paper, let's see what else we have in the main section. We always like looking at the pages 2 and 3. My favorite is the story behind the story. This is the Inside the Times section. This is about air travel, an assignment that ramped up with the pandemic hasn't slowed. Now air traffic control is in crisis.
Yeah.
It's a big issue out of Newark, New Jersey in particular.
Yeah.
And their Dateline section, where Times journalists are reporting from around the world. This is their effort to kind of show that their reporters are on the ground in West Point, in Rio de Janeiro, in Istanbul, in the Philippines. Obviously, more than just those places.
Of course.
But that's just an example. Let's see what else. So the international section. These are gun stores in Mexico. There are apparently 2 gun stores. It's legal, but you can only buy it from 2 different places. This is an interesting. You've seen there was
Oh yeah.
real altercation in India and Pakistan, and this headline: "War-filled Indian media with fevered falsehoods." So the jingoism there is strong. And then amid intense airstrikes, Israel says it's preparing a new Gaza offensive. At least 8 are killed in South Africa shooting. And America is now taking in refugees from South Africa, Afrikaners who are, quote unquote, being oppressed. What is the world coming to? What is the world coming to? This is a 2-page spread on Pope Leo, the quiet journey from Father Bob on the left. This story here to Pope Leo, and then some images. This is a picture of Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, sure.
An undated photograph. Here is a picture of one of the last world leaders to see Pope Francis alive. J.D. Vance visited with him, I think, a day before he passed.
Yeah.
Some questions around that, maybe. But Vance returns to the Vatican, possible reset for U.S. right. Vengeful at home, President takes his forgiving side on tour. And for Trump, adulation and no risk of protests. We talked about protests earlier. They don't do that in the Middle East. I've spent time in Dubai and spent 2 years in Cairo. What was interesting in Cairo, when I was there in 2003 to 2005, my wife got a PhD in, she's also a professor. Well, she's a doctor. She's not a professor, but she has a PhD. In Egypt, at the time, President Mubarak would let people protest just a little bit, just to let the steam out.
Sure.
And then clamp down, because if you don't let people get out to the streets at all, you're going to have a problem.
The people will take the streets. Yeah. So, and that's ostensibly why we have a First Amendment here in the United States. Ostensibly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at least for now. We'll see how long that lasts.
But that's
and you're talking about the impact on universities and forcing them to shut down departments or risk losing hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding. That's talk about a attack on free speech.
That's gangsterism, if anything. So if we don't want to use words like free speech, then we can call it gangsterism. That's what we can call it. That's that's pressing people in a way that it's unethical. Yeah.
So one thing we look at when we look at the print paper, because you don't see this when you look at it online, the ads tell you something as well, right?
That is true. Yeah.
They went with the center pages for this section is an ad. It's kind of hard to make out the words, but it's seeking those who won't accept a genetic condition as inevitable. Seeking cell and gene therapy analyst, hearing loss division. And this is from Eli Lilly, based in Indianapolis. But that's the whole ad right there.
Yeah.
They're
Huh.
not saying anything else in there. Let's see, now again to the national section. Rural funeral director brought wind power to town. That's in, let's see where, if I can tell where this is from, in Atchison County, Missouri, actually.
Mm.
Tell me, as someone who is, from the East Coast, and I lived in Seattle for 15 years, Missouri versus Missouri, what's the, can you educate us on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. The city people will say Missouri. People more rural going to the southwest will say Missouri.
Missouri.
So
Okay.
yeah, so you can generally tell where people are from. Generally,
And Kansas City is in which state?
Kansas City is in Missouri and Kansas. So there's a Kansas City, Missouri, and a Kansas City, Kansas. The Kansas City, Missouri is the Jackson County, and I think Kansas City, Kansas is Johnson County. And so there's a state border that goes between those two cities. So
Just to keep it confusing, right?
yes, of course, you know how it is.
So this is the continuation of that story. Professors face a backlash over their use of AI, and there's a quote. He's telling us not to use it, and then he's using it himself. That's a student, obviously. And then the professor, the value that we add as instructors is the feedback that we're able to give students.
Yeah.
And here's a slide. They have actually an image of a slide used in an organizational behavior class that Ms. Stapleton took contained misspellings. Now, I wouldn't say that misspellings are necessarily the dead giveaway that AI was involved, because
No,
typos all the time.
sure.
But one thing that I've seen is that people think that a dead giveaway for the use of AI is when people use hyphens.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've read about this. Yes. Uh-huh.
Humans don't use hyphens as much as they should, so that's
Yeah.
one thing
Yeah.
to think about. We are can't believe we hit 9:59. I want to make sure folks know that we will not have a show next week because of Memorial Day weekend. So we will not be seeing you, but we will be back the weekend after that, June 1st. And I want to also give a shout out our next guest on Shining Light on Shadows. So, Stefan, we haven't talked about this for a bit. I'm just going to see what else is in the front section before I go to those announcements. Here, this is worth looking at. This is the continuation of that
Yeah.
story where I Can't Breathe Ignite Protest is in its own struggle. So this is the
Yeah.
intersection of 38th Street East and Chicago Avenue in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that where there's people,
Yeah.
there's power, there's a Black Lives Matter
Yeah, I've been there.
on that sign there. You've been down? You've been there?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a lot to take in. Powerful in a lot of ways. Yeah. So it's always been controversial of what to do with the space, and they're showing images of around the corner. You see where it looks like grave markers are. That's very powerful too, where they have the names of people who are harmed by police violence or wannabe police violence. And that's very powerful as well. So, yeah.
And it's interesting in terms of, well, from what I can tell, this looks like it was a gas station
Yes.
on that corner.
Uh-huh.
And obviously not being used as such. I'm assuming ownership and
Yeah.
development and all that are all coming into play here.
Yeah. You know what? The funny part about all of this is people are really uptight that the protest protest artifacts haven't been removed and those spaces haven't been taken up again. But nobody says anything about that, like Gettysburg sites and these other kind of war sites. This was a site of war for the people in a sense, and so it remains as a kind of spatial marker of that battle for freedom in a way.
Absolutely. It is interesting how physical spaces are remembered and impact kind of our understanding of history. When I went down to Selma and approached the bridge, I drove out from Montgomery. That was probably the first time I'd been to a space, historical space that just looked like it did 60 years ago, or when the incident happened. It's different to living in Washington D.C. and you see the monuments and you go to Lincoln Memorial. It's a little bit different when you go to somewhere like Selma or here in Minneapolis, and it just history has a way of kind of getting your attention.
And you can feel the spirit when you're in those places. Not to be hippy dippy about it, but you can definitely feel something when you're there. Yeah.
When we were there and I looked back and we crossed the bridge, and I could tell from the photographs. There's a famous photograph of John Lewis being beaten, and I could tell where that was.
Yep.
Several hundred yards after crossing the bridge, you can kind of figure out almost the exact location. That gives you chills. That gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
To see that. That's something. We can see if there's anything else in here. This is once drawn to the U.S., international students feel their dreams fade.
Oh,
that's another important story that's happening. And then this is the end of that section. We got through just one section of the paper. Stephen A. Smith, America's best-known sports talker, is seeking a whole new kind of influence. I think he's thinking of running for office, if I'm not mistaken.
Have mercy.
That's the Sunday style section. Sunday business at LAX. Uber drivers wait and wait.
Oh, it's so awful. Oh, it's so whack. It's so terrible. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, like it's awful. Like, so if you're taking an Uber at LAX, you have to go through so many changes, Neil. It's awful. It's really bad. Yeah.
We are past 10. With your permission, Stefan, I'm just going to go through the sections. Not going to open up the sections.
Sure.
Just show people what's in the paper. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for the Sunday New York Times Read Along, the Sunday opinion section. The headline on the bottom: seeing, if only we had time, Stefan, seeing Black America in a new light. For too long, the Black experience has been reduced to the endurance of racism. One vision of our past points to a better way forward. John McWhorter. It's hard not to ask for a comment on John McWhorter.
So, we don't agree on a whole heap of things, but the Black experience is larger than struggle. There is joy and there's love and there's inspiration. So McWhorter can be right. The clock is right twice a day. So yeah. Yes, thank you for pointing out that one that you're looking at right now.
Definitely would have to take a closer look at that story at some point. Art and Leisure is backstage on Broadway for the Tony Awards. Going behind the curtain at Sunset Boulevard, Buena Vista Social Club, John Proctor is a villain in Oh Mary. And the book review: Read Your Way Around New York City with Jennifer Egan, Hernan Diaz, Lucy Sante, and more. New York Times Magazine is on Bill Gates. With public health under attack, Bill Gates is announcing a plan to end his foundation. That is, what is he thinking exactly? There's some controversy around that as well. Stefan, as we prepare to close, give us a few words about Ferguson, about your work. What do you want people to leave with if they hear nothing else from you today? What
Yeah.
should they know?
It's important that we situate some of the people that have scared us, situate them as citizens, situate them as potential leaders for the democracy movement. It's important that when we think about the modern United States and what's possible and what's going to happen in the future, you will have to look to Black youth in some way, fashion, or form who have always been here to save the soul of America. In the Ferguson uprising, they tried to do it again, and they set the stage for what could be possible, what could have been possible in terms of the evolution of American civilization. Take the time to read and think and reflect for yourself. You're not going to find everything you need on TV. So those are the things that I would try to emphasize most of all. I'm thankful, deeply thankful to those young people for making those steps and organizing and becoming civic citizens, and young Democrats. That's a small D. Young Democrats and patriots in that way. So thankful for them. Thankful for you and Sri for giving me the opportunity to speak about things just before the book is launched. By the way, tomorrow is Malcolm X's birthday, so make sure to celebrate as well. Yesterday was the anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education. So celebrate as you go forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stefan. Couple of comments from our viewers as we close. Diana says, great show. Appreciate your guest commentary. Super thoughtful discussion with Professor Bradley. Love it. It leaves me hopeful for America. Stefan, with all the negativity and the oppression that we talked about today, you still were able to give Diana hope for America. I think that's impressive.
Because she's focused on young people, Neil. Look, the young people. Yeah.
Apollo says, great show. Thank you. And may you have a stellar week ahead. Jonathan says, must flee. Great program and guest. Wish I could stay for more as well. So thank you for all of that. I want to remind people, if you do want to get on our mailing list, send me an email, neil@digimentors.group. neil@digimentors.group. I want to take a moment to let folks know about another show coming up on Thursday. We have not had a chance to talk about this yet, Stefan, but I have been hosting a twice a month show focusing on mental health, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. And our guest on Thursday is Aisha Sultan, who actually writes for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She's a columnist there. And she has a new series on local PBS 9, if you remember.
I do. News Channel 9.
Things we don't talk about, a PBS series on mental health. So I encourage folks to join us then. And then also, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We kicked off May on the New York Times Read-Along. I was actually the guest back on May 4th. We talked about my recent diagnosis of adult ADHD, my history of anxiety and depression, and almost just as important, my evolution, my growth as an advocate for mental health. It's something I never imagined talking about publicly before, but over the last year plus, I've become more comfortable sharing my own experience and creating a platform for people to share their experience as well.
Yeah, so very helpful. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Again, we want to thank our sponsor, Muck Wrap, for their longtime support of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read-Along, and remind folks that this show is produced by Digimentors, the social, digital, and events consultancy that Sri started several years ago. We will share again the book that Stefan Bradley has written. It's coming out on Tuesday, publication day. What are you planning for that day, Stefan?
Yeah, provided things go well, like I said, the tornado ripped through the city, but I'll be launching at Left Bank Books in St. Louis, which is a popular bookstore in the neighborhoods that I always used to attend book talks there. So I was going to be very pleased to be able to be in conversation with Jamala Rogers, who works with the organization Black Struggle, and my former student who wrote the foreword to the book, Jonathan Pulfis. We were going to be in conversation together, and so I look forward to that. If it goes off on May 20th, that's Tuesday at Left Bank Books.
I hope you're able to do that event. Of course, given everything that happened in St. Louis with the tornadoes. Again, Stefan Bradley is the author of If We Don't Get It, A People's History of Ferguson. Dr. Ibram Kendi said, if we don't get it, couldn't be more vital to the resistance pages of history. What a powerful centering and championing of the young Black activists who forged the Ferguson Uprising's thunderous call for racial justice. In 30 seconds, Stefan, explain the title, If We Don't Get It.
Yeah, If We Don't Get It was a popular chant. If we don't get it, shut it down is the entire phrase. And so I figured that the activists and organizers would pick up on that. A People's History of Ferguson is, I tried my best to allow the people to speak for themselves. I tried to use sources that allowed for the people who don't usually get to say things, the people who the nation doesn't usually pay attention to, that allow them to speak the history.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us this Sunday morning. And I am always thankful for our friendship and to be in your orbit. Thank you, Stefan. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I appreciate you, Neil. Take care.
Thank you.